But, oh, Bob and Gail and Doug and Leora and Wally, and I can't remember his wife's name. There are a lot of the people that, that we were close to when we were that age was getting married, and we postponed it, and then some crazy people dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor, and that stopped the postponement. So we got married before I went in the service, and I'm not unhappy that we did. We would have eventually gotten married, but I wanted to get my car paid off and get a little money to do something, which I didn't have at the time. But Mom got one of the things that she got out of that was an old 1929 Nash. Dad had it to go fishing, to use for fishing, so that he could go into the back country where you had high centers, and this had large wheels on it so that you could get by pretty well. Yeah.
How did she get it down here? She never did drive.
She didn't drive, no. One of the women that had worked for Dad that stayed with my mom took me out. I was old enough to drive then. She took me out and taught me, and boy, it was on those narrow gravel roads up there. I remember one time I almost run off a bridge. Yeah.
What year was this?
No size?
This was
1940.
before you graduated.
No, I'm wrong. I'm way wrong. It was 1930. I said 40. It's 1936 when I was a freshman in high school. So it was 1937 or 1937. It was 1937.
You went back up there to get married in 37?
In 37, yeah. It was 1937. There was a fellow in there that wanted to come south, so he drove. We packed everything in the car, and he drove, and then as we got close over the mountains and down into the level area, I did some driving. And then when we got down here in Southern California, then pretty much left the car parked in the empty lot next to Nine and Uncle Art, and on weekends I would drive out to pick Mom up at work, and she'd come and spend the weekends there at Nine and Uncle Art's with us.
You guys were in that little one-bedroom?
Curt, I counted up the other day, of all the people that went through there were over 12 different people that went through that one-bedroom house.
The little one where Lois and
Of course, there was the garage.
There
was a room in the garage, too. So
when I came, when Mom and Dad separated, no. After we left the home, we stayed with Aunt Margie, and then I stayed with Tollefson's. That year Lois came down here, and she lived with Aunt Nina, okay? Well, you can see the conflict with Lois and Dawn, And so then when I came down here in 1936 to start high school, I lived with Aunt Agnes, and I lived with her probably about half of my freshman year. And then the folks made the decision, hey, it would be easier for Don, and Art took the crates off of refrigerators from Sears. Not far from where Nine and Uncle Art lived, the park, remember the park, the big park over there? That used to be a dump. We used to call the dumps over there. There's a big not a deep hole, but a sunken area anyway, and in the wintertime water would collect in there. But anyway, Sears would dump their crates off of the refrigerators. And Uncle Art got a bunch of those and cordoned off part of the garage for a room for Don and I. And we had bunk beds and a chest of drawers, and it was comfortable. It was kind of cold in the wintertime, but it was comfortable. You know, it doesn't get that cold down there. And so Lois went to live with Aunt Agnes, and I lived with Nina and Art.
So Genevieve and Aunt Lois were friends?
Genevieve,
Well, I mean, they were...
they lived together.
They weren't friends. But
No, they weren't friends.
Yeah, but they did live together, so they knew each other
Yeah.
very well.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
getting way ahead, but
On the train of thought, yeah.
I'm trying to think why we got off onto that train of thought. But when the folks separated, that fellow drove us down, and
Now, tell us about the home and how you got into it and what the year was. And
After-
your experience. I know
yeah.
you had lots of experience.
20 and probably. Okay, I was at the home for 5 years, and we left there probably in 1934. So we went in 29.
Who ran it? Was it private or public?
Well, when we first came to Portland from Hood River after the folks separated, we lived a short time with the Whites, Lois's husband's parents. They had lived in Hood River and gone to Portland prior to that.
Addie was a member of the church, wasn't she?
Addie was a member of the church. That's right. They were, and we attended church in Hood River. I remember doing that. We stayed with them a short while, and Art, there was 3 boys and 2 girls. I don't remember whether they were all born at that time or not. I think they were. I think they were all. Well, we were little squirts. I was probably in the 1st grade in school. And Art and I, Art was my age, we'd get into a fight.
Who? What's his name?
Art.
Art.
Arthur.
Art White?
Art White. And he'd go crying to his dad, and his dad wouldn't have any sympathy with him. He'd fight your own fights, and if you don't whip him, I'll whip you. And we were done. I remember just as if it was yesterday. We were down picking up kindling in the basement, and we got what happened? We got into a fight again, and his dad gave me a spanking, and we were out of there. Mom couldn't handle that. So she rented a house and had a couple come in and live with us, because as I've told you before, at that time part of the nurse's salary was her board and room, and she lived right there at the hospital, and she was on call at on a 24-hour basis, really. Well, she came home once and found us, my sister and I, by ourselves. So that was the end of that.
Do you remember the name of the people that took care of him?
No, I don't.
How long was it?
It was a couple. I don't know that it was too long, because the sanitarium where Mom was working was just a block down from the home. It was a pretty good block, but it was just down from the home. And so Mom got a hold of the superintendent of the home, who was Mrs. Perry, Elizabeth Mary Perry. Wonderful woman. There were times I didn't think so, but it was my fault, not hers.
What was that? What kind of a home was it? Private?
No, it was. It wasn't. It was not an orphanage. It was for broken homes. Most of the kids there, well, there were very few kids there who did not have a parent. It was basically for broken homes. There were 3 cottages: Corbett, Meyer, and Failing. These were all, I can't think of the word. They were wealthy people anyway. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Meyer and Frank. It was a large department store in Portland. Well, it was from the Meyer family. And the word I was thinking of, philanthropic? No. Philanthropic?
Oh.
Anyway, they probably built those cottages and helped sponsor the upkeep and so forth of the. It was not a government thing. My mom at that time was making $44 a month in her board and room. Of that $44, she paid $22 a month for our upkeep. That's $11 a piece. Can you imagine supporting 2 kids on $22?
Dad didn't help at all.
I learned since Mary Ellen and I have been married that Mrs. Perry wrote a letter to my dad asking for money, and he refused. And it's a pretty sad letter. He said, "You're trying to." I don't remember what it. We've still got it someplace.
Who gave you the letter?
Timey.
Who?
Timey.
So her mom had it.
Yeah, Lois had it. When mom died, Lois got her trunk and all of this kind of stuff was in it. And at that time, Lois and I were on good terms, but Lois and Dolores were not. And so Lois got everything that Mom had. I wasn't going to get all upset and cause more problems in my own family than I needed at that time. But
Anyway,
no.
The home.
Dad did come out to home once or twice to see us. And it was a funny thing. The Meyer and Frank, the guy that used to drive the Meyer and Frank truck out there, was a good friend of my dad's, and every time he'd come out there, he'd look me up. But when Lois and I first went there, they had an opening, one in Failing Cottage and one in Meyer Cottage. And Lois went to Meyer Cottage, and I went to Failing.
How do you spell Failing?
Fehling. Yeah, probably German. Sounds like. In retrospect, of course, we thought we were abused, and I used to get into trouble a lot. I know that I got into a lot of fights on kind of Lois. But eventually, there was an opening in Failing and Lois, in Meyer, and I moved down to Meyer. And the house mother and I, to begin with, just agreed not to agree. And it was a bad time down there.
I imagine. How old were you by then?
7, 8 years old, something like that.
Just,
And for whatever reason, and she probably had a good reason to do it, she hit me in the head with a piece of kindling. And I got a bump on my head. And, oh, man, I thought I was going to die, you know. I got a bump. What's going to happen? I was scared to death.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on sick. They had a sick room over there and a nurse who took care of you. I used to get headaches. Oh,
Before they hit on the head?
oh yeah. Sick to my stomach and a headache, you know. And I'd go on over to the sick room and she'd give me castor oil and
For a headache?
well, it was Marge.
Oh.
She was right. I was constipated. Been eating green apples or whatever, you know.
Do the opposite.
Oh, I'd get those headaches quite often, and it was strictly constipation. And I would put mentholatum on my head. What good that? It just felt good, mentholatum.
Well, yeah, told you.
And then I'd lay down and sleep, and then I'd wake up without the headache.
Oh, that is just exactly Derek. When he was about the same age, up until he was about 12 or 13. We had all kinds of tests done for him, so it's...
Well,
Oh.
you talk about stories. Yeah, there's lots of stories, and
Well, keep telling.
Start with the ones that remember. You gotta tell them
oh,
all.
we had a baseball diamond, and of course, we played a lot of softball, and it seemed like it was a long ways away from the cottages down to that softball diamond. When I went up there this last time, look, I could have thrown a rock from where I was standing down to the softball diamond. And they had cut this and leveled it out, and where they had cut out, we used to sit on the bank there while the other guys were batting, and then we would. Do you remember? I guess it. Tootsie Toys. They had little lead cars and stuff, and we would carve little roads in the bank and dig out places where to park the cars, and I always spent a lot of time doing that. And they had a nice playground. They had rings, and they had deal like a fireman's pole. You know what a fire pole is? Deal. Boy, I was scared to get up on that, and I thought once when I learned that I could do that, I thought I was a pretty big kid by then, you know. And it had a really nice slide, metal slide, and it had a handball court. That's where I learned how to play handball. And a horseshoe. We could pitch horseshoes, and during the summer, they had a lady who came over, and was kind of a director, and we did a lot of crafts and things like that during the summer when you weren't going to school to keep kids busy. Everybody, you can imagine that one woman trying to take care of 20 kids. So there was plenty of work around there that we did. When I first went to Failing, I worked in what we call the pass pantry. It was a room between the kitchen and the dining room where they kept the dishes. And when we cleared the table, we took them out there, and then the older girls did the dishes. And my job, when I first went there, I think I was 7. But anyway, my job was to wipe the silverware. And I look at all that silverware for 20 kids, and I thought I'd never, ever get through with it. You know how that is. You piddle and paddle, and you know how kids are. When I don't know how long I did that, but I think I went from there to doing the locker room. The locker room, I did the locker room and the hall.
In failing?
In failing. Curt, to be honest with you, I don't remember what I did when I was in Meyer Cottage. I just do not remember. We weren't there very long. Then they moved both Lois and I back to failing. I did the locker room had 10 lockers in it, and they had a chain on the door so that you could only open that door to a 90 degrees, so that you weren't opening it into the other guy's space. And each person had their own locker. And I mentioned that chain because I remember one time the house mother went to slap the kid, and he ducked, and she hit that door and broke the chain. She used a razor strap. She was like my dad. My dad used a razor strap. She used a razor strap, and probably rightly so, because she was a little short English woman, and some of the kids are as big as she was, you know.
Well, razor strap, I think, was English discipline.
Well, it was pretty much the discipline of the time in those days. Although Mrs. Perry had an 18-inch ruler, about a half-inch thick, and yeah.
Got to be good friends with her.
I did, and
What are some of the things that you did to develop that,
basically,
cultivate that friendship?
Basically, the thing with Mrs. Perry, and this was only in the first few years first maybe even just a year or so that I was there. Before we went to school, and we dressed for school, we had school clothes. Apart from school, no, it wasn't a uniform, but regular
Decent clothes.
decent knickers. That's right, knickers. And other than when you weren't school and when you first got home, you changed into coveralls. And they're kind of like this, like a jumpsuit, Bob. But when I first went there, I had to wear a panty waist. Do you know a panty waist? A panty waist is kind of like a vest or a tank top type deal with buttons around.
Hold up your pants.
So that's what held your pants up. Well, I didn't want to wear a panty waist. I wanted to wear a belt like the rest of the guys. So I would try to sneak by with that belt on, and she'd catch me. You had to show your hands and your fingernails and make sure that your shoes were shined and that your clothes were clean. Well, she'd catch me every time, and she'd say, "Stand over there." So I'd stand over there till she'd inspected all 3 cottages, and then put your hand out and whack, whack on the hands. And really, that's the only thing I ever got into trouble with Mrs. Perry for. She was one of a kind, I'll tell you.
You call her Mrs. Perry. Was she married?
No,
A widow?
no, I don't know, Don or Curt. I don't think she was ever married, but I don't know that. I don't know that.
I remember going to see her when we were up in Portland.
Yeah. I'm sure you would remember. We went up there a couple of times. One time she was in apartments over in town, and the next time she was out in a retirement center that was built out in where the sanitarium where my mom used to work. Portland Open Air Sanitarium was a tuberculosis. Yeah.
Did she contract? Did she?
No, they
Rechanged it. I mean, it wasn't a sanitarium when.
No, the sanitarium was gone, and they'd build a nice retirement area right there. But I got the razor strap a lot of times, and I don't doubt that I deserved it.
Or, can't remember.
I don't remember any number of things that there was a number of things that maybe you didn't do your work right. There were things that, or maybe you didn't come in where you were supposed to. Maybe you sassed her, and I wouldn't doubt that I did that. I mean, that's my nature. After somebody leans on me a little while, I'm apt to sass. One of the things too that a punishment was that you didn't get dessert. You know, everybody else got dessert, so you don't get any tonight because. And maybe I didn't do the work right. I know one time one of the women that Mom worked with was saving lead foil. Do you?
Well.
It's like tinfoil, only it was lead, and they used wrapped around cigarettes.
Oh, no.
And things like that instead of aluminum foil. And I'd picked up a package of cigarettes, a cigarette package, not cigarettes, but a cigarette package, on the way home from school one time. And that's another thing. I always found something to do on the way home from school. I'd be late getting home from school. But going through the pockets, she found this and she thought I'd been smoking. Well, and on wasn't TV, but radio, cigarettes, one of the advertisements for cigarettes was, "Do you inhale?" That was real popular. Do you inhale? Yeah. Well, I don't know whether you guys have seen these bushes. We used to call them Indian tobacco. They got little Indian tobacco. They got little brown seed-like looking things that look like tobacco. And one of the other kids and I got some newspaper and put those things in it and went down in
It was a bush or
a little weed.
Okay.
It was a weed.
Did it have kind of big leaves, and then this thing would grow up the middle,
Yeah.
and then little things would turn brown?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
I know what you're talking about. They're we called them dock weeds.
Well,
And we
you know.
used to do the same thing.
Ah!
Never could get it to work. But anyway.
Well, we thought we were being pretty smart, so we were talking to the girls about it, you know, and one of the girls went in and told on us, and we got, for that, I went down and hid in the basement, and of course, after a while you get hungry, so you gotta come up, and I
They were
got
waiting for you.
rigged for that, that's for sure.
Oh,
But down there where the baseball diamond was, we discovered a sandy spot. Huge big area that was pure sand. And we dug a cave down in that, and it had a pillar. It just dug a big circle around in there, just wide enough for somebody to crawl through. And the center of it was maybe that big around, you know, but when kids were down in there just messing around, they'd kick it or carving in it, and it kept getting smaller and smaller. And one time there was about 3 or 4 of us down there, and with a dog. We had a dog out there, an Airedale dog. And somebody bumped that thing, and it caved in on us. And boy, I don't know whatever happened to that dog, but that dog was out of there. He was, we never did, I mean, he was all right, and we
Yeah.
found him, but he was out of there before then. And I was in a little bit, but I got out. But one kid who was, Meg did, the kid that did the bumping, because he was bent over on all fours. And of course, in this area, he had a pocket of air, but he was covered up, completely covered, and scared. We were digging, we didn't dare dig with shovels because we afraid we'd hit him, but we were digging like dogs, just scraping that, trying to get him out of there. Well, that scared the dickens out of us, so we never went back there into that thing again. But we went to public school. Seemed like it was 5 miles away, but it was probably maybe 3/4 of a mile. I don't think it was a mile.
What was the name of the school?
Grout Elementary School.
G-R-O-U-T.
Grout. And we got time off for lunch, and not far from the school was a wooded area. And there was a house, an old house in that area, and we called it the haunted house. So we'd go over there to that haunted house. And we got back from school one day, and we were late. So of course they call Mrs. Perry, and we're all in trouble. And we didn't want to get in trouble. So we ran away. And we went over, we got clear over on the west side of the river and up in the hills above Portland.
Umpqua?
No, the Willamette. Umpqua's in Roseburg. The Willamette River, some big, beautiful homes up there. And here's these 5 kids trudging along, and it's getting dark and late and hungry. And I don't know how it happened, but some lady took us in and fed us graham crackers and milk. Oh boy, they tasted good. I still do. You're right, Curt. They still do. I remember it. And she called Mrs. Perry, and of course she come and picked us up. Well, running away is out.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
Well, they didn't. She didn't. I didn't get. I don't remember. I don't think any of the rest of the kids did, but they didn't.
She kicked somebody out because of that?
Yeah.
How come? He was the ringleader?
Just against the rules. I mean, if you don't want to be here, then we don't want you. If this is the kind of kids you're going to be.
Well, how come him and not you?
Oh,
Well,
he didn't think
I don't recall that anybody was sent away at that time, Curt. I don't know. I don't remember that. But later on, there were 3 brothers, Mansfield, Marshall, Gordy, and Cecil Mansfield. 3 brothers that were in Failing Cottage with me, and they were good kids. Marshall and I were the same age, and we had a fight every day. We were good friends, but we fought every day. It was, you get in the locker room, everybody gets around, and you have a fight. I'd run away once, and I knew what it was to be hungry, and I knew what it was to be cold. So Marshall and I get up an idea, we're going to California to Aunt Nina's. So we took one of our blankets, and we swiped some stuff out of the pantry, and we ran away.
We were prepared.
We were prepared. Well, probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe 3 o'clock, we went into a vacant lot and had something to eat and decided it was time to go to bed. Well, we lay there for a little while, and it didn't get dark, and of course we didn't have a watch or anything. So we got up and started walking again, and we were walking the wrong way. We were going north when the Nina lived south. But Marshall's dad was a streetcar conductor. And every streetcar that come by, we'd duck into the storefront to keep from, well, eventually, and here again, I don't remember whether we called or whether somebody caught us, or I just don't remember. But Mrs. Perry come and picked us up, and Marshall was gone. And I really think, you know, I wasn't really a bad kid more than anybody else, but I really think that because of the relationship between my mom and Mrs. Perry liked my mom. And that's the only reason I was allowed to stay there. Because it was just, that was a rule. If you run away, you're gone. I didn't run away again.
Did your mom have a stern talking?
Yeah, that was... and it was right about that time, I guess, that Mom came out to see us every Thursday. Thursday was her day off, and she came out and after school, and we'd wait there for the bus to come, and then we could visit with her for an hour or so, and then she took the bus back. And I decided this time that I was going to go back with her. I was going to go with her. So she took me over to the cottage, and I followed her right back down to the bus. Well, the second time she took me back, she gave me a pat. So I didn't go a third time, but I was really wounded. I really felt bad. But once a month, you could go, one weekend a month, you could go home with her. And Mom had her room, and while we were young, you know, when we were just little guys, Lois and I stayed in the room, and then when Mom came over, Lois slept on one side of her, and I slept on the other side. But then as I got a little older, then I would sleep in one of the other nurses' rooms.
That was still on call.
That was working nights, yeah. Mom worked nights. She was a night nurse. And then when she wasn't there, then I'd have to go and sleep in one of the other rooms. But that's another time when I was big enough that I could we could find our way out. I knew what bus and what streetcar to take to get out there. And then she'd meet us, and we'd go up the hill with her. The sanitarium was up the road, up a hill, probably a half to 3/4 of a mile from the bus. And it's funny, well, I guess it's not so funny either, because that's where we met Tollefson's, and it was right there in Milwaukee, which was near the sanitarium. So I guess it's only natural that she would.
You left the home and lived with Tollefson before?
No, Mom rented a house, and Aunt Margie and Juanita and Uncle Fusen came and lived with us.
Uncle who?
Fusen, Margie's
Husband.
Bill Fusen. Nobody ever called him Bill that I ever heard of. Everybody called him Fusen. Huh?
That was his last name.
Fuson was his last name.
But you still
F-U-S-O-N.
called him-
How do you spell it?
F-U-S-O-N.
Well, you know, we're getting ahead again. I know that there's a story about how you used to love some of the food and you got burned one time for inappropriately disposing of the food and forgetting about it and getting
In
paddled
your-
for it.
In your
Remember that?
pants pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that, okay.
That was not in the home.
Yeah, it was in the home, but it wasn't me. It
Oh.
was, okay. And there's a couple of stories
She's
about,
in denial stage.
No.
I remember this thing.
no,
I kind of did myself.
Elmer Rademacher. Now, there were there was 20 kids, and there was 4 tables, so there was 5 at each table. And the younger kids and the new kids that came in always sat at the house mother's table. I sat at the house mother's table for a long time, and then usually one of the older girls was the head of the table of the other tables. I left the home about the time I was been able to be the head of the table. But Elmer sat at the house mother's table basically because he was a pretty picky food eater. He didn't, and he just did not like asparagus. Just plain and simple, did not like asparagus. And she said, well, you're going to sit there till you eat it. Well, he'd be sitting there after everybody else was gone. We're all out doing our work. And he would take that asparagus and either put it in his pocket, or they were rectangular tables and they had a ledge underneath. So he'd take that asparagus and lay it under that ledge underneath, and it'd mold, and after a while you'd begin to smell it, and that's how he got caught. But you're right, one time he was going through the pocket hung up in our lockers, and she'd come through and go through and make sure that we put the stuff in the laundry when it belonged there. And remind me, the laundry, that's another good story. She put her hand in her pocket, and here's, of course, that was the razor strap time. But with the laundry bit, of course, it was a 2-story building, and we had laundry chutes, and you put all your dirty stuff down the chutes, and then
Had your name on your clothes?
your clothes had a number on it. Mine was 16, and each cottage had a different colored thread. Corbett was red, Meyer was blue, and we were green. And mine was 16. I was number 16 in green. But long about, well, we took a bath on Wednesday and Saturday. Long about Wednesday, that chute had quite a few clothes in it, so it was kind of fun to open up the chute and take the clothes down by yourself. You'd hit those clothes at the bottom, and then you could crawl out the bottom. I wet the bed while I was at the home, and had to do my own sheet every day morning, take the sheets off, take them down, and rinse them out, and take them down to the basement and hang them up. And then when I come home from school, take them up and make my bed. And the big kids, it was just fun for them to taunt. I had, of course, had to take a shower, and they'd turn it cold. Oh man, I guess that's why I can't stand the cold now. The cold shower, and then
You had to have a cold shower? Or
oh
they
yeah,
turned-
cold shower, and then I'd start yelling because it was cold, and they'd turn it in and turn it hot.
Oh,
Yeah,
Who did that now?
the kids,
the-
the older boys.
And how old were you then?
7, 8 years old.
Gee, I wet the bed longer than that.
I think I wet till I was 9.
That's not mine.
Getting back to the dining room, the floors were linoleum, battleship linoleum, and every every Saturday we cleaned and waxed those floors so they were always shiny and slick. Well, you took turns clearing the table. As I said, you took it out to the pass pantry where they washed them. And we always had dessert. You clear the table and then you bring the dessert in. Well, I remember this one time it was my turn to clear the table, and I'd clear the table and I'd brought everybody's dessert in but my own. And coming in I slipped. And we had pie. It was apple pie. I slipped and the dessert went up. The plate came down, and then the pie came down. I caught the pie. I let the plate go and caught the pie. I wasn't going to miss out on my dessert.
Oh, smash.
That was probably...
Mary didn't think the same way, did she?
Well, Mrs. Wallen was our house mother.
Yeah.
Mrs. Wallen was the house mother. She was the little English
Oh.
lady.
uh-huh.
And Mrs. Wallen and I got along okay. I got along real well with the house mother. They got one day off a week, and one weekend a month. But I always liked to see the substitute house mother come by. I really liked her. Her name was Mrs. Dyer.